Jose set the house on fire and we can't find him. And I barely made it out. I'm naked. I don't even know where to start this story. I don't even know how one thing could turn into another thing, and then all of a sudden you turn around and everything you had was gone, and everyone you know is not there anymore. And so here we go again. Before I start, thank you for taking a chance on this video. Thank you for subscribing to this channel if you already are. If you are not, hi, I'm Zoe Leid. I post travel vlogs as well as I interview people in the entertainment and legal industries, and I tell story times. I share these crazy experiences that happen to me that I just take this as a time to reflect on everything and teach you guys a lesson. So before I get into this story, I just want you guys to know that I am not doing this to badmouth anyone. I am not doing this to hurt anyone. I just want everyone to remember to be vigilant. I want everyone to remember that if you see something, you have to say something, because in the blink of an eye, everything you know and everyone you love could just be gone, and it could just... So I took some notes on my phone so that if I get too emotional, I could hone myself in and get back to the part of the story that I just have to share. So this story begins in March 2020. So for everyone, you know that March 2020 is when the coronavirus was rampant. This was the beginning when not everyone knew what was going on, but we knew that whatever was happening was not good and that there was nothing that we were going to be able to do about it for a while. So in the earlier portion of March, my grandmother passed away. Now, I mentioned this in the story time about the tenant who took me to the People's Court. So I talked about my grandmother dying in that story time. May her soul rest in peace. But this story takes place at her house yet again. So there were several different crazy things that happened at this house, and this was the pinnacle. Like, this was the climax. This was the end. The house no longer exists. Words can't even describe how I feel about this. But at this time, I was not speaking to my father. So my father, who anyone who knows me personally knows, he is my best friend. Him and I are extremely close. We're like this. But there are times where he does things that I don't agree with. There are times when we'll either have like a big blowout or we'll just not talk for a short period of time. But this particular instance, we did not talk for a couple months. So I didn't agree with the way how he was handling my grandmother's affairs. If you have not watched the last video, you don't really need to watch in order to keep up with this video, but you should go watch it. I'll link it above. Now, my grandmother had a series of health issues, but what ultimately happened was a mix of COVID and cancer. So while she was on hospice care, or right before she went on hospice care, she gave specific instructions on how she wanted her life, or the remainder thereof, to happen. She said that she wanted to die in her home. She did not want to go to a nursing home. She didn't want to die in a hospital. She wanted my father, myself, and my adopted brother to be there on her last days. She wanted me to wear my hair straight for her funeral. She had specific songs that she wanted me to sing, as well as other songs that she wanted everyone to sing in like a chorus fashion. She knew exactly where she wanted to be buried. She wanted to be with her union workers. Now, my grandmother, she did several things. She was a nanny for celebrities in New York back in the day, like some of the big old Hollywood celebrities, as well as she worked for the Jewish nursing home and so on. So like she had accomplished a lot of things in the health field, and she was just an amazing woman. She did so much with the little that she originally had when she migrated to this country. But to not get too much into her story and to stay on track with this story, the day before her funeral, a family friend, you know, I feel really crazy calling this person a friend, because when you hear how this story pans out, it's crazy that this person was a family friend. But we're going to give her a name. Let's call her Carla. So this family friend, Carla, she was a hairdresser. Now, to tell you a little backstory on Carla, she's someone that had known me from the time I was maybe 5 years old. She was a friend of my father's. She was a relative of my father's friend. And my family and this family just had like a lot of intermixing, in the sense that some of them worked for us, some of them they like, I guess you could say, partied with and so on. But this lady Carla, she was a either a CNA or like a home health aide or something like that. And she was a hairdresser. Now, she is an amazing stylist. I'll give her that. She could do anything with any hair texture. But because my grandmother's dying wish was for me to straighten my hair for her funeral, I said, you know what? I'm going to book a session with this lady and she's going to style my hair. Actually, can you do me a favor? Please pause this video, go get a snack, go get a glass of wine, get some apple juice, get whatever you need to be able to digest this story, because we're going to be here for a while, but this story is juicy. It is well worth listening to. So I'm going to go get a glass of wine and then let's talk about Carla. So like I mentioned before, she is a CNA and she's a hairdresser. So basically, she used to be my grandmother's home health aide, but sometime in between the time that my father and I had the falling out, she and him also had a falling out. Now, she had provided us with references to other nurses that were taking care of my grandmother, and there was one that she had an attitude problem. She was just crazy, and long story short, this woman and her got in a fight, and she wanted my father to take her side. My father is like one of those people that is very anti-confrontation. He just like kind of like ignores stuff, and he's quick to call the police. So I guess she tried to fight him, like she tried to physically fight him, and he called her agency, he called the cops. The cops came and forcibly removed her from the property, and needless to say, she never worked for us again. So now let's talk about her hair salon. So this woman did hair out of her house. Years ago, she worked in a salon. Now, I think she was renting a chair or she was a partial owner or something, but this was one of those salons where, you know, like when you're watching like TV and movies, and basically like they're like, oh girl, and they go and gossip and they're curling hair and they're talking all of this and they're talking about their men and they're talking about who did what with who. She had one of those salons. So now, growing up in a Christian, well, my mom's home is Christian, growing up at Christian school and all that, I didn't have that kind of experience. We don't typically let people touch our hair. It's very selective, and I had no reason to really go to that kind of salon. So I used to enjoy going to her because she always knew the gossip. Did you hear about this person? Did you see what that person did? Oh my God, girl, you won't believe what I did with him last night. You won't believe who's paying my bills and what I'm doing for them to pay my bills. Oh. I'm not going to talk her business, but she was a very questionable person. So now fast forward to the day before the funeral when she's doing my hair. She basically professes her love for my father. Now, I'm taken aback by this because this, like I said, this is someone I guess you could say is his friend. I never knew of them having like any relationship. And funny enough, like I asked my dad a while after and he was like, no. But either way, in her mind, this was her man. And this explained a lot about how her family acted towards my mother as well as towards just other women that were in my father's life. But basically she's like, I can't believe that he would do this to me? To me? After all I did for him and how I love him so. This is a Caribbean woman. And how I take care of him and I clip his toenails and I do this for him and I take care of his mother and I cook for him. So I'm like, I just want to get my hair straightened. But what you don't want to do if you have hair this thick is to talk negatively about the person with the hot iron in your hair. So I'm listening to this story. I'm listening to her go on, and in my head I'm like, man, I kind of miss my dad because he would get a kick off of this. Like, she's really talking about how she's so in love with him and how they're gonna end up together. But now she hates him. She wants her revenge because he did her dirty. He gave her bun, as we would say in Jamaica. So she's like, I had enough of him, and this is what he said about you. So I said, what he said about who? And she's like, he was talking about you.
He needs some milk.
I'm not going to get too much into the other aspects of why I wasn't talking to my father, but what I will say is I didn't know what to believe. Because even though he is my father, there were questionable things that he did and said. So when she starts telling me all this outlandish stuff about, oh, he called you this and he said you do that and he was like, you was trying to do this and he seen you with this person and you be moving like that, I'm like, he said what? So now I start basically crying. And you know, you can't get too emotional when someone's like burning your hair straight because that hot iron might touch your head. But she's very talented, like I said, so nothing happened. But I'm just like basically like losing my head because I'm like, why would my own father do this to me? And she's filling my head up with all this stuff about who's he, just everything. But then she mentions her brother. So let's say her brother is Jose. So Jose is a very questionable man. Now, this entire family is questionable, but to me, Jose is the worst. But to my family members, Jose is the best. Yeah, let's see if Jose is the best by the end of this story. So Jose is a carpenter by trade. Jose is a construction man. Jose is very versed in that skill. Now, what I will say about each person in this family, they have one thing that they're extremely good at. And everything else, they kind of, you know, I'm not going to call them, you know, but, you know, if a spade's a spade. So either way, Jose's great at construction. So he works for my father's company on and off as an independent contractor, which basically means like if my dad need him to do something, he throw like a little cash at him and the man will come and do it real quick and then go back to his day job. So now I've known Jose for a lot of years too, but she starts to tell me that Jose and her are doing this elaborate scam on my father. So I'm like, how are you scamming my father? She proceeds to tell me that, you know, your dad is going blind. So I had to like, now I'm already seated, but I had to really like slouch down for this because now I'm thinking, you know, my grandmother was blind. My dad had his little eyesight issues in the past. He's undergone surgery. And a lot of people have eye complications in my family. So I'm like, is he really? And she's like, yeah. During the time that you were gone, like, he can't see much. And, like, his fake eye also is giving issues. So she explains to me that she has worked out a schedule for what time of day he could see versus what time of day he cannot. And she has been sending paperwork to him to sign so that she could get paid as his nurse. So now you're like, wait a second, wasn't she fired? Yes, but she was fired as my grandmother's nurse. My father also has a nurse, and I guess he never went through like the extent to make sure that she was taken off the list of as a possible caretaker for him. So she being Carla, is sending Jose to my father with documents telling him that this is immigration paperwork or whatever other legal paperwork that my dad's company does. And he's signing off on it, thinking that he's helping this guy gain passage into staying in America or whatever, when meanwhile he is getting her paid for work that she's not doing. So now, I ain't no snitch, but I don't like illegal-ish. Like, that's not my thing. Everyone that knows me knows, like, if I see something shady going on, I usually will say something unless I feel like it's completely none of my business. If it's none of my business, I'm gonna mind my business. So when she tells me this, I'm like, no, like, tell me more. She also mentions other little sly stuff that she's doing. So now, my grandmother left me in charge of her assets. Not everything, but a good portion of it. So, like, for example, she made me her health proxy, as well as she gave me her house when she passed, and so on. And at this time, when my father and I, like, bumped heads, I kind of renounced everything. Now, prior to that, I was like the eyes and the ears of the house. So that's how I ended up in that situation with the People's Court. That's how I ended up with the situation with the prostitute. That if you want to hear more about that, watch my story time next week. But basically, when I was gone, there was no one there to watch out for my grandmother, much less everything else going on there. So she explains that she's sending people to steal. So I'm like, what are you stealing? Like, there's nothing there to steal. There was like an incident before, well, a couple incidents. So like everything that was expensive was basically stolen already. So I'm like, what is there for you to steal? She explains to me that she sends her cousin, who's another CNA, to steal medical equipment. So I said, pardon me? She's like, yeah, you know, the government sends your grandma gauze, they send her tubes, they send her needles, they send her all this stuff, and I could sell that stuff and make money. So I've been telling them, like, leave the old lady one and then slide the rest in your bag and bring them here, and I'll flip it, and then I'll give you a profit. Like, I'll give you a portion of the cut. So I'm like, nah, this lady's dead conniving. Like, this is crazy. Like, are you serious? Are you serious right now? And at this point now, I went from not caring, because at first I was telling her, no, I'm not in the drama, I don't want to hear about my father, to like being scared, to being upset, to being sad, to crying. And now I'm just vexed, because now I'm like, hold on. You're not only trying to mess with my father, but you're stealing stuff from my grandmother. She's telling me about, like, and I mean little stupid stuff too, like napkins. She's like, oh yeah, and like when he buys Bounty, I tell them, run his toilet tissue, run this. And this is during the beginning of the pandemic to a certain extent. So, you know, toilet tissue is scarce. And, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm like, I need a drink. And that's all I could think. And I couldn't have a drink. And then she starts to offer me food. And I'm like, I'm not going to eat food from this lady. Like, who knows what else she's up to. But long story short, she explains there's a grand finale And she keeps casually throwing out this grand finale, like we're on a movie, like this is a television show. And I'm thinking, this woman really thinks that this is a soap opera. Like, she's like, this is Days of Carla's Life or General Hospital or something, because I don't know what her issue is, but she really keeps mentioning this grand finale. So I say to her, what do you have planned? And she's like, you don't have to worry about that, but I'm gonna get him back for you. So I said, for me? She's like, yes, you know, you're his daughter. You're the only one that looked out for him. You're his only child. You're the person that takes care of him. You wasted years of your life looking out for him when you could have been doing other stuff. And this is how he treats you. You see how he treats women? You see how he repays us for our love?
Nope.
Because remember, she's in love with him. You see how she... and I mean like the fake crying and everything. So... I tell her, no, like, put me on. I'm like, girl, no, you know, I don't talk to him. I want to know, like, I want to be in on it. Like, put me on. Because I want to know what she's going to do. Because, like I said, my father has a terminal illness. My grandmother is, like, dying. Like, my grandma was on bed rest and stuff. Like, she was, like, dying. My father... he had the chronic problem, so it's something that could be monitored, and I don't want him to die. Like, I don't want her to do something crazy. But I didn't know the extent to which people are willing to do crazy stuff. So she would not tell me what this grand finale was. So I just had to like push it off and say, you know, she's nuts. She's just talking. Fast forward to the day of the funeral. She actually showed up. She came in her scrubs. Now, she was not invited, but we expected her to come because, like I said, she did take care of my grandmother for a portion of time. So she shows up in her scrubs and she stays for maybe 15-20 minutes. She says hi to me. She says hi to, I think, my mother. And then she like scoots out through the back. Like, she came, she looked at the coffin, she started crying. I gave her a box of tissue. She scoots out in the back. Never saw this lady again. Like, to this day, I've never seen this lady again, thank God. So, fast forward to the evening of the funeral. Everyone left. And they blamed the coronavirus. They blamed the aspect of not knowing. But honestly, my dad's family, they're just funny. A lot of them are just funny. And I was just happy that people showed up to show some respect to my grandmother. So it ended up just being my dad and I. We didn't have a repast because no one came. We went to a restaurant and we talked. And he, you know, he was torn. Like, he was clearly beat up about it. I've never seen my father like that. Like, well, very rarely, but he, you know, he lost his mother. So we're talking about like how our family's estranged. We're kind of like reconciling our differences. And I'm just like, man, I really missed you. And that was honestly the best meal I've ever had. And shout out to the Real House in Pelham, New York, because their food is always amazing. I've gone there so many times after because I've just had so many different really deep conversations in that place, and the staff, they're very professional, very nice, and the food is great. But, you know, reason why I have to say all of that is that because we're talking about some deep stuff, and I'm telling him, you know, I'm happy like we did this. You know, there's some things I need to tell you. This is not the right time. I'm gonna wait a couple days. You know, we gotta sort out grandma's stuff. We have to, you know, most people wait, I think, 8 days before they throw out the person's stuff or donate it or whatever. And he's like, yeah, you know, this is not the time. Let's just talk about her. Let's remember her and laugh and talk about the jokes and the music that she used to listen to and so on. And we'll, you know, we'll get over all of this at some point. Well, you don't get over it, but especially you don't get over it when what happens next happens. So fast forward to the next day, him and I were supposed to meet up. Now, my father, like I said, he has like health issues, so he sometimes could be tired and not able to meet up. So he ends up telling me, hey, I need to go run this errand still, but let's do it a couple days from now. So fast forward maybe about a week, And he's like, tomorrow morning you need to wake up at 6 a.m. and come and pick me up in your car, and we're gonna drive to this location and do XYZ, and I just need to get this all sorted so that everything is taken care of with your grandma's affairs. So I tell him, okay, I'm gonna go to bed early. I think I went to bed like 9 o'clock that night. Like, I went to bed so early that it was ridiculous, but I knew I had to take care of this. The next morning, 6 o'clock comes, no call. 7 o'clock, no call. 7:30, no call. Now, I work at this point because maybe a month after my grandma was put on hospice care, I went back to work. I had to make money for my family. I went back to work. So the days that, if I take a day off or if it is a weekend, I need to get whatever has to get done because my time is limited. So when 8 o'clock comes, I call him again. This is like the 5th call. He picks up and he's like, hey, we're not gonna go anymore. Oh no, I'm dressed already. Why we're not going? Now Jose's here.
I got a bad feeling about this.
What? Yeah, Jose. I thought you told me you haven't spoken to Jose since the blowout with his sister. Yeah, like for some reason he wasn't returning my calls, but last night after the funeral he called me and he was like, yeah, sorry for your loss. Oh, you know that work that you need to get done, I could do it for you today. I'm like, work? Because at this point I'm thinking there's no work that needs to be done at this house. Like, I know everything that happens at this house. He's like, yeah, he actually reminded me that like maybe 8 months ago I told him that the shower, the water doesn't get hot quick enough, so he's gonna come do it.
Oh, it finally hit me.
So now it's starting to hit me. Oh my God, he's gonna drown my father. He's gonna drown him. He's gonna kill him in the shower. So, and I know you guys are like, okay, you dragged it. No, like, I'm like, is this the grand finale? But I don't want to, like, I don't want to be the boy that cried wolf. Like, I don't want to tell my dad, like, yo, this is what's about to happen. So I just tell him, no. Tell him you can't do it today. What? Tell him you can't do it today. Tell him that we have to go somewhere. Like, tell him that today's not a good day. Trust me, I'll talk to you when we're driving there. I'll tell you in the car. Oh, listen here. Like, so my dad starts yelling at me on the phone. I'm like, what? And he starts going crazy, calling me out of my name, doing all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, no, like, listen to me. No, you're a child. Like, you know, like, I'm a grown man. You can't tell me what to do. If we're not going today, we're not going today. So at this point, I tell him, you know what? Don't talk to me again. Because we just went over this. You just barely apologized. Because you guys know Caribbean parents don't like to apologize. And here we go again. So I decided, you know, this is it. This is a wrap for this relationship. About 2 hours later, I see that he's calling me. I sent him to voicemail. I see that he is calling me again. Send him to voicemail. After the 5th call, my mom's like, who keeps calling you? And I'm like, him, but I'm not picking up. Nah, maybe you should pick up. Like, you don't know if like he fell or something, because why would he call? He never calls you that much. And it hits me. I'm like, oh my God. So I call him back and I say, listen, I don't want to hear you call this. I don't want that. He's like, no. You need to come. So I'm like, I need to come where? And he's on the phone. No, like right now. You need to come get me. So I'm like, come get you from where? So now let's give my grandma's house a name. So we call it Bright Ave. Like that, because the name of the street was Bright Ave. Like, of course, that's not the real name, but... So, he's like, Bright Ave! I'm at Bright Ave, and the house is on fire! What? The house is on fire! Jose set the house on fire, and we can't find him! And I barely made it out. I'm naked! What? I'm naked in the house. You need to come get me. The house is on fire and I'm naked. And the fire department, they took the whole street. The whole street is blocked off. You're gonna have to park all the way on the main street and walk over. No, please come. I have no clothes on. sinked. My heart sinked because I'm like, the house is on fire. And he's like, it's gone. Bright Ave is gone. There's no Bright Ave. Bright Ave burned down. I barely made it out alive. You need to come get me. So, what do you think I did? I got in my car, like, barely dressed. Well, I wasn't naked like him, but I had on, like, my house clothes. And I threw on my sneakers and I got in the car and I drove to Bright Ave because what else was I supposed to do? So when I got there, the first thing that I noticed was that everyone was outside. Like, when I mean the entire, like, 3-4 block radius, everyone was outside. And the smoke, like, the entire air was black. Like, there was ash on the street. And I think I didn't mention that Bright Ave is a big house. Like, it is a mansion. So when this thing caught on fire, it, like, burnt to the ground so rapidly, and it just sent up this black smoke. So now I'm running. Like, I don't even know if I locked my car. That's how freaked out I was. I'm running to the house, and I find my dad hiding in Jose's car in this tiny robe. Like, what I mean, like a robe that looks like it's for a woman or a small child. And he is like ashy, like his feet are ashy, he's barefoot, he's panicked, like he looks like he's seen a ghost. And I'm like, what happened? And he said he was supposed to be changing the shower head. And now my house is gone. So my father also stutters, and I'm not, of course, like, that's ridiculous. I'm not gonna imitate it, but, like, could you imagine, like, you hear someone and they're like breaking their speech and they're stuttering and they're freaked out and they're scared. And I'm like, where is he? Because now I'm upset. Where is he? We don't know. So then the police come and they start to question us. Was this person a licensed contractor? Where is this person's whereabouts? Where is the key to this person's car? No one knows where he is. They scouted the entire area. No one could find him. He's gone. So eventually I call his sister. So I call Carla and I say, you need to tell me where Jose is, because he burnt down Bright Ave and he's gone. He fled the scene of the crime and the police is looking for him. So she's like, what? But you know when someone, like, they act over the top, so you know, like, they're in on it? Oh my God, I can't believe that happened. So she tells me she's gonna call him, but then they actually start freaking out because he's not picking up his phone. So fast forward like maybe an hour, his niece, so Carla's daughter, we don't need to give her a name, she comes and she's like, where's my uncle? Where's my uncle? And basically I'm like, we don't know. Then his car starts to go off. Yes, the alarm for his car starts to go off. So we had to evacuate the car. So my dad is outside with a million people out there naked. And his car is drawing attention to the fact that he's standing next to it naked. And we see like all the people, because like when there's a fire, like insurance people and people who are contractors and everything, they show up because they want the job to rebuild. And everyone's watching and she drives off. Fast forward about 2 hours later, he shows back up. So at this point, the fire department had already spoken to us. They said the fire marshal had deemed it an accident with suspicious cause. So basically what that means is that something suspicious happened here, but it is not so directly, it's not so bad where we're like, this was definitely an attempted homicide. It is just something that it could have been an accident, but it's a really shitty accident. So he explained, he being the fire marshal, explains to us that it seems like he was trying to sweat a pipe, to join the pipes, and it caught on fire, and instead of putting it out with a rag or water or whatever he was supposed to have with him, he sealed up the wall. But the issue with this story is that he sealed up the wall to the extent that it seemed like he knew it was on fire, but he still decided to seal up the wall. He even plastered it or something. It was something crazy like that. Like, yeah, he didn't only put the shower back in the wall. Like, he plastered and he sealed it up with sealant and caulk and whatever. So we're like, oh. So then my dad shares that how he realized something was going on is he's sitting in the living room. Now, he's one of those people that, like, he sits on the couch, like, in his underwear. He's sitting in the living room watching TV with his robe, and he starts to smell smoke. So he starts calling out, Jose, like, you smell that? Jose, I'm in the kitchen, and I'm not cooking. What is that? And then he realized it's coming from the attic. So we had one of those attics that you pull down. He pulls down the attic, and like a dragon, it goes like the steam. So he said he literally almost fell backwards because he had to go limbo just to avoid his face being burnt off. So then he starts running down the stairs. Now, my father also, at this time, he had just gotten out of his wheelchair. So this man who just learned how to walk again has to run because the house is literally like he let the fire out. So it was trapped in the ceiling. But because he opened that, the entire back has just caught on fire now. So he runs out. He realizes this guy's nowhere to be found. He calls the police. I think the neighbors called the fire. Like, everyone saw what was going on. So now you're thinking, what does Jose have to say about this? When Jose shows up and the police asks him, what were you doing? How did this happen? Where were you? He has a cup of coffee in his hand. He's like, oh, I didn't know. I just went on my lunch break. So I'm like, what? And they asked me to step aside, and they want to talk to him, and I'm eavesdropping, and he's like, oh yeah, no, I went, this store down the road, they didn't have the coffee that I like. So I went all the way, like, let's say he went to the other side of town. How did you get there when your car is here? And, oh no, I drove. They knew he was lying because, remember, his alarm went off. So they had to remove the battery from his car to hold as collateral so that he would have to speak to them. And also because the car just would not shut off. So he's like, oh, did I say I drove? I meant I walked. The store's not that far. It's just over the bridge. So they're like, interesting. So they come to my dad. They're like, if you want to press charges, you definitely can. We cannot say that this was not an accident, but it damn sure doesn't look like one. My dad says, and I every time I think about what my dad says, I'm like, this is nuts. He says, oh no, it's okay, no, it's fine. I'm not gonna press charges. So everyone leaves. Red Cross comes. The Red Cross tells us to go upstairs, get the stuff that we could salvage. Nothing is salvageable. Everything is full of thick, black, gushy tar because they had to use about, I think, 3 different fire engines, had to spray water. So the entire house is soaked. Everything that was in the attic, because I guess my brother had stuff in the attic, it had lit on fire and fell down, and it was just nasty. Like, I smelled, like, I'll insert photos as I'm talking, because when you see this, you're gonna be like, what? It was just gross. And thank God for the Red Cross. They gave us new shoes. They gave my dad clothes. Like, they gave him a full outfit with socks and everything. They put him up in like a Red Cross housing for a couple of days, and he was homeless, but he was taken care of to some capacity. They gave us water and I think like granola bars or something like that. and they give you like a check for like $50, like just something to get you through the night until you could figure out what you're doing. But this entire time I kept trying to convince him to press charges, and eventually I had to tell him the story. I had to tell him about the hairdressing appointment. I had to tell him everything, and he's like, she said what? She did what? Why didn't you tell me? Da, da. So I told him, I said, I promise you, like, I'm telling you this because I know this was not an accident. And he said, well, there's nothing that can be done about it now. There's no point in me taking him to court. He has no money. He can't buy back my house. And then the insurance didn't come true, so there was no insurance to rebuild. And needless to say, my father was homeless for a long time, and that was tough. I was not homeless because I had just moved in with my mom like a couple months before when we got in an argument, but we lost everything. And I don't even, now that they're rebuilding, now that it's been a year and the house is still not done, but they've eventually started rebuilding, it won't be the same. I think to end this story, all I could say is that, you know, we make fun of this. We say it's corny when you're on the train in New York and you hear, if you see something, say something. If you hear something, tell someone. But that's what you need to do, because what you don't want to do is underestimate someone. What you don't want to do is put yourself, like, you don't want to compromise yourself. You don't want to put yourself in a scary situation because you couldn't just like put your pride aside and say, yo, like, this is weird, like, this is what's going on. So my father wasn't upset with me. He, honestly, I don't even think he was upset with Jose. I think he just thought Jose was an idiot. He's like, Jose just doesn't know how to do his job. But I don't talk to anyone in this family. Funny enough, he talks to a couple people. He doesn't talk to Jose and Carla, but he talks to other people, which I think is nuts, because this entire family, like, they've told us stories about other stuff they've done. And if you guys want to hear those stories, comment below Jose story times, and I'll tell you more stories on Jose because he's a riot. But to end this story, and so I could go finish this wine and have dinner, yeah, definitely, if you know something's about to go down, you need to warn someone. If you know that there's a crazy person amongst you, you need to take yourself out of the situation, because when shit hits the fan, it could be really smelly, gushy, black tar shit. Like, it could be like your house burning down, you're homeless for a year type things. Yeah, but thank you for watching this video. I hope you were able to take something away from this story. And for everyone that's been asking how I'm doing, I'm actually shooting this in my new apartment. That's why it's just like a blank wall. But I'm okay. My dad is okay. We're safe. Everyone's okay. And we're just grateful that, sad to say, my grandmother died a week before this happened, because she probably wouldn't have made it out. So yeah, thanks again. If you like this video, please share it with a friend. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell them cousin. Don't tell Carla and Jose though, but tell a next friend. And, you know, stay tuned for the next one. Please like and subscribe. Bye.